widowed, and once upon a time I was the kind of father people called too kind to survive. 15 years ago, cancer took my wife, Eloise. Since then, I raised our only son, Daniel, on my own. I did it all. Cooked, cleaned, went camping, took his graduation photos, paid his debts, covered his tuition, even paid for his first apartment, even when I had just a few dollars left in my wallet. I thought that was what fathers were supposed to do. But maybe I was just creating someone who only knew how to take, never how to give. Daniel's 30 now, successful, sharp, engaged to a beautiful young woman named Savannah. The kind of woman you look at once and just know, she's going to be trouble. The first time I met her was at a bar. She didn't even bother shaking my hand. Second time, Thanksgiving dinner at my brother's. She spent the entire evening scrolling through TikTok and giving the roasted turkey side eye like it was some ancient relic. But I let it slide. I always let things slide because Daniel looked happy, and I'd spent most of my life staying silent for the sake of someone else's happiness. That weekend, they came to stay at my house. I had everything ready. Guest room spotless, fresh linens, folded towels, lemon-scented counters. I even ordered their favorite pizza. Of course, I paid for it. The next morning, I got up early to cook. Pancakes, bacon, fresh hot coffee. Daniel slept until nearly noon. Savannah picked at her food, asking if we had any avocado. In that tone, like I'd failed to meet her 4-star resort expectations. I smiled. Still, even poured her a glass of orange juice. And then, that afternoon, I was in the kitchen making lasagna, Daniel's favorite. The house was quiet except for the soft clatter of knives and a little jazz from my old radio. Daniel was in the shower. Savannah walked in. I thought maybe she'd offer to help. Instead, she walked up to me, pushed me, not hard but firm, against the counter. Leaning in close, breath hot on my cheek, she said in a voice sharp as razors, "Listen, old man, once we get married, you're getting dumped in the cheapest nursing home we can find. Daniel's sick of carrying dead weight like you." I froze. My blood surged to my temples. I wanted to believe I'd misheard, that it was some kind of sick joke. Then Daniel walked in. He saw everything. I looked at him, waiting, hoping, a father waiting for his son to step up. But Daniel just nodded. "Yeah, Dad, we need this house more than we need you." The kitchen went cold. I turned back to the sauce, stirred it slowly, added oregano, like nothing had happened. Because if I let go of that spoon in that moment, I think I might have shattered, but I didn't break. I smiled through dinner, asked about their wedding plans, Mexico, offered to help. They said no. I did the dishes as always. They went out to meet friends. But that night, sitting alone in my quiet kitchen, I wasn't Marco the father anymore. I was Marco, the man who'd just been discarded by his own son like a broken appliance. And that was the moment I decided, no, I won't be silent anymore. That night, when Daniel and Savannah stumbled back in, half drunk and giggling, I was still sitting quietly at the kitchen table, pretending to be asleep, pretending not to hear. "Does that old man really think we're going to let him live in this house forever?" Savannah whispered. I heard Daniel chuckle. Then she added, "Still not sure if his life insurance policy's active. But if it is, that's our one-way ticket to Mexico, babe." The kitchen was pitch dark, and my heart, it didn't bleed anymore. It burned. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual, made breakfast, smiled, brewed coffee, set the table, told them how nice it was to have them around, said I'd see them at the engagement party. I waved as they pulled away. Savannah didn't even look back. They thought I'd stay silent. What they didn't know was that the Marco they knew had died last night. At 10 a.m., I made my first call. The first was to Henry, my brother, the only one who ever warned me Daniel was taking advantage. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Come home. Tonight, we're starting." I nodded and began the journey I should have started years ago. The second call was to an old friend who worked at a law office, where I was once a clerk back in my 20s. I was direct. "I need legal help. Fast. No paperwork. No red tape." Because years ago, I'd helped him keep his first job. The third call was to the bank. I asked for a full audit of all linked accounts, revoked Daniel's access completely. And then, I saw them. Little transfers, $200 here, $350 there, $410 again. Altogether more than $7,000, siphoned out quietly. Emergency expenses, he'd called them. I didn't feel hurt. I felt awake. That evening, I went to Henry's. He opened the door and pulled me into a hug like I'd just come back from war. "So, old man Marco's finally raising his head, huh?" I laughed. My first real laugh in years. Over the next 3 days, I met with an estate lawyer who helped me transfer full ownership of my house into an irrevocable trust. Legally, I no longer owned the home, but I held lifetime residency, and Daniel could never touch a single brick. A senior bank manager. We changed every account, every password, every two-factor authentication. Daniel, who once stood to inherit everything, now wasn't listed on a single document. A real estate agent, just to learn the truth. The land I lived on, now worth nearly 3 times what Daniel believed. And it's still rising. And I didn't stop there. I hired a private investigator, the son of an old coworker. I used to chase that kid down when he'd skip school. Now, he handed me a file that felt heavier than bricks. Everything was in there. Savannah had been married twice. Both husbands, over 50, both bled dry financially, and then she vanished. Oh, and she never divorced the second one. His name? Steve. Lives 2 hours away in a quiet little town. Day 4. I called Daniel and Savannah. Dinner, 7 p.m. I've made a decision about my future. It's time we talk. Savannah replied in record time. Can't wait. Thank you for rethinking everything. Daniel sent a longer text, thanking me for finally seeing reason. They thought I was announcing my move to a retirement home. They thought they were finally getting the house. What they didn't know was that a hurricane was about to hit the dinner table. I spent the whole day prepping, scrubbed every corner, folded napkins, polished silverware. I made Daniel's favorite dish from when he was a boy, lasagna. The same one I'd cooked the night Eloise took her last bite. The table looked like Christmas, but instead of gifts and mistletoe, I laid out truth. Guests began arriving. First was Henry and his wife, Kate. Then my niece, Riley, and her husband. Then Mrs. Peterson from next door, the woman who'd known Daniel since he was in diapers. And then 3 gentle knocks at 6:45 p.m. Mr. and Mrs. Grant, Savannah's parents. I opened the door. They were nervous but polite, holding a box of muffins. Her mother whispered, "Thank you for giving us this chance to see our daughter again." I just smiled. The dinner wasn't complete yet, not without the main course. 7 p.m. sharp. Daniel's car rolled up the driveway. I watched from the window. Savannah looked irritated. Daniel looked confused, like a man walking into a trap he set for someone else. I opened the door. "Come in, son. Everyone's waiting." Savannah immediately stiffened. "Whose cars are those outside?" I smiled. "Old friends. Family. Come on, tonight's a special dinner." They stepped in. The air was thick, like right before a thunderstorm. Savannah walked into the dining room and froze. Her eyes locked onto 2 figures at the table. Her mother and father, sitting, staring. At the daughter thought they'd lost for over a year. "Vanna?" Mrs. Grant whispered, her voice trembling, eyes wet with disbelief. "You're alive? Why would you?" Savannah, no, Vanna, staggered back like she'd seen a ghost. Her mouth opened, closed, then exploded. "You have no right. What is this? Some kind of sick ambush?" I calmly gestured toward the dining table. "Please, everyone, take a seat." Daniel looked dazed, like he'd woken up in someone else's nightmare. Savannah stood frozen, pale, silent. And then I spoke. No yelling, no banging on the table, just the truth. The conversation in the kitchen, where she said they'd dump me in the cheapest nursing home they could find. The unauthorized transfers, the missing heirlooms, my wife's ring, her coin collection, even Eloise's wedding dress. The fact that Savannah had never divorced her last husband, that she wasn't just manipulative, she was a black widow, minus the murder, but with every ounce of greed. I laid it all out piece by piece like I was presenting evidence in court. With every word, I saw Daniel sink a little deeper into his chair. Savannah stood there stiff as marble, and then came the final blow. Mr. Grant, her own father, calmly stood up and placed a file on the table. Inside, a still active marriage certificate between Savannah and a man named Steve R., just 2 towns over. Daniel turned to her, his voice cracking. "What the hell is going on?" Savannah stammered. She said the divorce just hadn't gone through yet, that she was going to tell him, that I'd set her up. No one believed a word. The room was heavy with silence. The truth had already settled in. Daniel began to cry, not soft tears, but ugly, gasping sobs. He crumbled, just like when he was 10, and broke his arm falling out of a tree. Except this time, I didn't rush to catch him. I just looked at him. And for the first time in my life, I said what I should have said a decade ago. "No, Daniel, I'm not saving you this time. I'm done being your doormat. I'm not your safety net. I'm your father. And you let her plan my erasure." Savannah stormed out of the dining room. Daniel stayed, shoulders hunched, drowning in the silence. Around the table, eyes that had once watched him grow up now only saw disappointment. Dinner was over. No one went for seconds. No one spoke. Just me, staring out the window as the night breeze moved through the rose garden my wife once planted. And I knew. Everything had changed. The next morning, no tears, no text messages, no Savannah rambling, no Daniel knocking, asking for anything. Just sunlight streaming through the kitchen window and the gentle hum of the kettle warming water. I sat there, holding a cup of coffee. My hands trembled slightly, but my heart didn't. For the first time in years, I drank my coffee slowly. No one rushed me. No one frowned at me. No one waited for me to serve them anything. Daniel didn't come back right away. He disappeared for a few days, like ink bleeding off the edge of a page. I used that silence to rebuild, installed a fingerprint lock on the front door, moved every legal document into a secure trust, named Henry and Kate as my official beneficiaries. They don't know that. I just wanted the people who checked in when they didn't need anything to get what they truly deserve. I also met someone I hadn't seen in a while, the man in the mirror, no longer flinching, no longer dodging eye contact with himself. Silver hair, crow's feet, a slightly bent back from carrying too many years on his shoulders. But in his eyes, for the first time, was the look of someone who finally knows his own worth. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A single message from Daniel. "Can I come home and talk to you? I'm not asking for anything. I just want to say I'm sorry. For real." I didn't respond right away. I read it, put the phone down, and walked outside, to the garden, where Eloise once planted her first row of carrots, where I once carried Daniel on my shoulders to pick the season's first apples. I pressed a small wooden sign into the soil. It read, "Where I start planting myself again." That night, Daniel showed up. No tears, no begging. Just stood there in front of the door, not even daring to ring the bell. I opened it. We looked at each other, for a long time, not like strangers, but like two people who'd survived a storm that took nearly everything. I didn't let him in. Instead, I stepped out onto the porch, sat down in my old wooden chair, and patted the one next to me. Daniel walked over slowly and sat. He sniffled a bit, didn't say a word for 5 whole minutes, and then quietly he said, "I lost my way, and instead of trying to find it again, I just buried the compass." I didn't respond, because some things don't need an answer. He hung his head. "I get it if you never want to see me again, but if one day you ever need someone to push your wheelchair, or just sit and listen, I hope it can be me." The breeze swept across the porch. I didn't look at him right away. No promises, no instant forgiveness. But I finally said, "Start by being a man. Then maybe you can be my son again. I don't need pity. I need a man who can look me in the eyes without lowering his own." He nodded, and this time the tears didn't look like weakness. That night he didn't come inside. He stood up, walked away, didn't ask for money, didn't apologize again. All he asked for was a chance. I closed the door and felt like I'd been reborn. Tomorrow I'd replant Eloise's flower bed. The next day I'd have a drink with Henry. And every day after that wouldn't be something I survived. It would be something I chose to live. 4 days passed after Daniel stepped off my porch. No texts, no calls, no second apology, nothing. And I wasn't waiting. I got up early each morning, brewed my coffee, walked the garden, talked to Henry about adding a new fence in the back. I started caring for Eloise's orange tree again, something I'd ignored for years. I also began rewriting my will, not out of spite, out of clarity. Then came Sunday morning, a knock at the door, 3 soft taps, like someone who knew they no longer had the right to be let in. I didn't rush. I opened the door. And there was Daniel, not like before. This time he stood tall, eyes still red, clothes worn but clean, and in his hand was an envelope. "Dad," he said, "this is a detailed breakdown of everything I owe you. Tuition, phone bills, car payments, transfers, and even the chair Mom loved, the one I let someone haul off and sell." I didn't ask him how he knew the numbers were right. I didn't open the envelope. I just turned around, walked back onto the porch, and like last time, I patted the empty chair beside me. Daniel sat down. Then he spoke. "I went back to Savannah's old place. She's gone. I found Steve, her husband, and I got the first punch to the face in my life." He paused. "I'm not here to ask for anything." His voice, firm, the first time he sounded like a man. "I just need to know, do you think I'm still worth teaching how to be a decent human being again?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and came back with one simple thing, a cleaning cloth. I placed it in front of him, then pointed to the yard. "This spring, I'm replanting the garden. A decent man doesn't wait around for forgiveness. He starts with the smallest things. So wipe the furniture, pull weeds, fix the fence. If you want to learn how to stand up again, start at the roots." Daniel stood up slowly. "I can do that." I didn't say anything more. I just smiled, for the first time in a long while, not because I forced myself to, but because in his eyes, I saw a flicker of something Eloise used to love. The next day I told Henry to cancel the meeting with the lawyer. The will stays the same, but I'm opening a new chapter. Marco's school, for those who forgot who they were. Daniel still has to prove himself, step by step. No special treatment, no shortcuts. The door doesn't reopen for who he was, but it stays cracked open for anyone willing to knock again with a new heart. Some people only learn when life knocks them flat, but others, like Marco, rise up, shake off the dust of being someone's doormat, and walk tall in their own home again. Not as the forgotten father, but as the man who finally chose to love himself. If this story struck a chord with you, drop a comment below, leave a like, share it with someone who might need to hear this, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story, where real truths are told straight from the heart. Thank you for listening to mine.